So thank you everyone for coming. My name is Jennifer Rogers, as Hidaka-san mentioned, and I am co-chair of the Asia Society Japan Arts and Culture Committee. I want to welcome you to our symposium today, which I'm excited about, which is the Manga Direct Delivery, Artist, Publisher, Lawyer, and Creative. We are thrilled to have such a great turnout, and I think it really is a demonstration of how much this topic interests and resonates with everyone. We're going to cover all aspects of manga, from the creative to the commercial, which we hope will provide you with a holistic picture of both the manga creation and the industry that supports it. In Japan, that's worth 693 billion yen, or about 4.5 billion US dollars, which is now also a global business. We all know how popular Japanese culture is around the world, and Japan's global soft power influence continues to grow, fueled by various factors, including the increasing popularity globally of creative endeavors such as manga. It's not surprising that Japan now ranks number 4 in the global power index that's done in a survey every year. I'd like to provide you with a brief introduction of the Asia Society. I think many of you might be familiar with it, but it was founded in 1956 by John D. Rockefeller III as a nonpartisan nonprofit institution in New York, and now, as Hidaka-san mentioned, has 16 locations, including Tokyo. Its initial purpose was to promote greater knowledge of Asia in the United States, but it has evolved today into a global institution. As we all know, economies and cultures have become interconnected. Its aim is now to address a range of issues and pressing concerns across Asia to help deliver actual, real solutions for the benefit of all and to promote global cooperation. Arts has always been at the center of the Asia Society because John D. Rockefeller believed it was important for improving mutual cultural understanding, and he was a patron of the arts himself. He bequeathed his Asian art collection to the Asia Society in 1979 after his death. In March 2018, the Asia Society Japan was launched in partnership with the iHouse, where we all are today, as a new global hub in East Asia. The Asia Society Japan's Arts and Culture Committee fosters awareness of Japan's unique contributions to the arts, particularly focusing on Japanese and Asia fine arts, applied arts, crafts, design, anime, of course, manga today, and performing arts. But chiefly, what we try to do are sponsor events like this that connect the Japanese artists with audience around the world. In the past 6 years, since our establishment, Asia Society Japan has hosted 57 arts and cultural events out of the 200 that Hidaka-san just mentioned. This demonstrates how critical the promotion of arts and culture is to our overall mission. The key element, as Hidaka-san mentioned, is our annual symposium. We have held 4 symposiums in the past, this is the 5th, ranging from the future of the art market to art collaborating with ESG and SGD and social innovation. As in the past years, our goal for the symposium is to connect people not just to the art industry itself and creation, but to demonstrate its broader relevance to society and interconnectedness with other industries. As briefly mentioned, we feel that manga is an excellent topic for this year's symposium because of how successfully it has modernized with the use of technology and adapted to new consumer markets. Its accessibility to a wider audience, young and old, and we believe as well because of the popularity it has not only in Japan but globally. Importantly, this topic is unique as it presents an interesting case study in the intersection of arts, culture, policy, and business. As a longtime resident of Japan, I have been aware of manga since I came to Japan in 1981, which I believe is Showa 56, that long ago. And I saw everyone on the subway reading it. Since then, I have been fascinated by its broad appeal. However, it was our choice of this year's symposium topic to get me to actually read manga. Because of that, I am now familiar with the delightful Termie Romae manga by our guest speaker, Mari Yamazaki, about an architect who needs to build a Roman bath for the emperor and gets inspiration through a time slip between ancient Rome and modern Tokyo. This has made me appreciate and want to delve deeper into this world. I am no longer surprised at how beloved so many of the manga artists are to their readers, demonstrated by the use of AI to create new manga by the famous artist Osamu Tezuya posthumously a few years ago, literally bringing the manga artist back to life. The topics to be discussed in this symposium through the keynote, fireside chat, and panel discussion are the full ecosystem of the manga. We'll take a deep dive into the world, hearing directly from leading professionals that are across the industry, the artist, publisher, lawyer, and creators. We'll talk about not only the creation, but its evolution, the methods of preservation becoming a new topic of discussion recently, the shift from paper to digital that's allowed its growth to a global industry, and then industry challenges with piracy and intellectual property laws. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, prize-winning manga artist Mari Yamazaki. We're starting with her because, of course, the core of the industry is the manga artists themselves. She will speak on the present and future of manga. Mari Yamazaki is a native of Tokyo, born in 1967, who moved to Italy in 1984 to study art history and oil painting at the National Academy of Fine Arts in Florence. She debuted as a manga artist in 1997. Between 2003 and 2013, she lived in Syria, Portugal, and the United States. She is truly international in her experience and now splits her time between Italy and Japan. Some of her many awards in Japan and Italy include, in 2010, she won the third edition of the Taisho Manga Award with Termie Romae. In 2015, she won the Tetsuya Osamu Award, as well as the New Face Award by the Japanese Ministry of Education. And by the same ministry, she received the 2015 Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology Award. In 2017, this is very impressive, she was conferred by Italy's President of the Republic the rank of Commander of the Order of the Star of Italy. And most recently in April, the Asahi Shimbun announced that she and Miki Tori were winners of the 28th Tezuka Osamu Cultural Prize for their historical manga, Plinius. She also writes prolifically. Her recent publications include Life Without Borders, Viola Mother, and 3,000 Years of Human Happiness Theory. She has other notable manga works, including Steve Jobs, Plinius, Olympia Kiklos. And in 2022, and many of you might have seen this, Netflix adapted Termie Romae into an animated series, showing us how manga has now crossed over into different areas of the arts. In 2024, she launched Termie Romae Redux. And finally, she also has time to be a visiting professor at Tokyo Zoukei University. Please join me in welcoming this very accomplished speaker to the stage. Please come up, Mari.
Thank you for your bountiful introduction. I am graphic novelist and essayist, and my real job is painter. I am Mari Yamazaki, and as you just heard, to start out with, I went to Italy and studied there for a long time. I went to study arts, so it's arts history and oil painting. That was my major. However, with that, economically, it was rather tough. Therefore, suddenly, when I was 28 years old, I changed direction to become a graphic novelist. And as I just said, it was because of economic reasons. That's why I switched to becoming a mangaka. But manga now supports the Japanese economy. It's a big contents industry. Anime, it's being watched outside Japan as well. And manga, there are lots of manga-based movies and animations, live action. lots of them. And even if you're reading manga, people will not make fun of you, they will not become angry, and people don't feel shy of reading manga. But actually, when I was a child, my mother really disliked manga. It wasn't just my mother. The people around me, everyone, disliked manga. And my mother, I would buy a manga with the little pocket money I had and she'd throw it away. She'd say, if you keep on reading manga, after you become grown up, you'll end up no good. So manga back then was considered to be something not good. But now, looking at the young people today, they probably feel why. Today, they talk about people moving away from manga. The parent brings Doraemon to his children and says, please read it, please. That's what I hear. In the olden days, it was the exact opposite. And my age, or people just above us, if you listen to the manga artists, their parents were avidly against their becoming manga artists. Why is this? Regarding manga, in Japan, after the end of World War II, GHQ came, the occupied forces, and after Japan became independent, in Japan, there was a movement to get rid of bad publications. So if your children read books like this, it's not good for the children. So lots of books were pretty much burned. It's difficult to believe, but Osamu Tezuka's Atom, or Gekko Kamen, or Akado Suzunosuke, these manga were all criticized. This isn't just in Japan. I hear it's a global phenomenon. But in the case of Japan, there was the Japan Organization to Protect Children, and they were very active. And this is from back then. And these ladies in the photograph, they were saying these disrespectful manga, they were not really disrespectful, but they were saying it's bad influence on the children. So in this way, they'd walk all over town and put up flyers. They were very active. However, when you think about this, my mother, she was born in 1933, and when she was young, she was told, if you read books, it's not good for you. And there were movies that were being shown, and there were people saying, watch movies, you'll end up no good. And then TV emerged, and people saying, if you keep on watching TV, you'll grow a tail. So things that have influence, these kinds of media, are often criticized like this, I think. And going back over the history of mankind, this has occurred repeatedly. Things, media that have influence, in some way or another, they are criticized by society. And earlier on, like I said, in Firenze, in Florence, I studied the Renaissance era. And after becoming a graphic artist, I was amazed. Manga artists, and back then in the Renaissance studios, the artists who were working there, the environment was very similar. People at the top, let's say there's the artist at the top, and then there are artists who work as a team. And even at those positions, it is very similar. And as an art, these works of art were born, and their influence, people were afraid of their influence. In Florence, there was a movement to burn books and art, and the flag bearer was a friar. His name was Savonarola. Regarding the Christian or religious morals, so pictures, paintings that were supposed to express religion, these kinds of icons. So they had this set format, and it was for religious worship. And these paintings, once into the Renaissance area, like Sandro Botticelli, suddenly ancient Roman themes were painted. In a broad sense of the word, this is a naked woman, and nudity was considered to be something embarrassing. So this is a process of removing things that tied you down. But Savonarola criticized this and said these are bad, and he tried to ban them. And regarding Botticelli, he was influenced by Savonarola, and Botticelli burned his own works. And from there, Savonarola had this much power. And these movements, constantly, even in the modern world, in the Asian region, in China, there was the Great Cultural Revolution. So there are times when culture is not respected. So these media that have the ability to influence, like I said earlier on, manga is poison, and mothers throw away their children's manga. But after becoming a manga artist, there are lots of things I noticed. For example, earlier on, I showed you an icon painting. So as an ordinary painting, this was the limit of, let's say, what people were able to enjoy. And if you were to replace this with a painting made up of 3 oil painting colors, regarding a color that had 3 colors, 12 colors, 26 colors, if you tell them about all of these colors, then they want to make do with 3 colors. But suddenly, an expression artist comes and says, you can depict this with 12 colors, 26 colors, which means society will become confused. Therefore, every time that happens, there'll be a lot of commotion. And the artists themselves in contemporary society, they suffer and they have sensitivities and they make society a richer place. So from a field of flowers where nothing existed, artists will not be born who can influence people. So people have the ability to bring people together. People who have performed arts, they need to have loneliness, they need to fight against things. And through these experiences, through these difficulties, they become able to have the techniques to handle lots of colors. But human beings, there's a lot of pressure on human beings several times in the past. And if the influence is strong, then the economic power becomes stronger. Regarding Savonarola earlier on, in the Renaissance, Florence, there was a lot of money moving. It was a finance center. That being the case, people, they probably forgot to face themselves. To start out with, Florence, the Renaissance that occurred in Florence, earlier on I said it was similar to manga, but the artists and also the designers and the sculptors, they were just artisans. They were craftsmen. So they were producing arts, but they never signed their works of art, because this is the work of the studio, it was not the work of an individual. However, after a certain point in time, these craftsmen started to express themselves, or they started to become individual artists. And that situation, I wanted to depict Italy, and I wrote this manga, Gli Artigiani. So this is an artistic, it was a series in an art magazine. And this is the cover. And top left, you can see Leonardo da Vinci. That was top left. And then there's Sandro Botticelli, and then there's Messina, and then there's Bellini. There are 4 from the Venetian school. And in turn, top right, top left, Leonardo da Vinci. He was the first painter who, as an artist, he himself had status, and he had a certain level of influence, and he himself, he signed his works. In the past, signing your work was something that did not happen very often. Sometimes you'd hide it, get it in there, and your icon, you'd have maybe your self-portrait somewhere in the picture. And with this manga, the artist himself or herself realizes that they want to express themselves.
Until then, churches had been the patrons, but they became a little weaker. I'm sorry, the letters are very small. You may not be able to read, but what this describes is Donatello on top, who was an artisan before he was expressing himself, and he had grown into an individual will conviction. This is the process that he had gone through. The young Botticelli met him, and he thought that he may be living in a wonderful work in wonderful era that is in transition. As you know, Botticelli will in the future illustrate the birth of the Venus, but perhaps this is an experience that led him to move out of the box, break the barrier, and become an artist. Now, after Leonardo da Vinci visited Venice, well, he is an individual who's known for not completing the works that have been consigned to. He has only left 18 oil paintings, and the Este families, Isabella, have continued to ask him to draw portrait. And the friend of his said he's been requested again, what do you do? And he said no, because he doesn't want to do the illustration, the portrait work, and eventually he does not complete the work. It represents, illustrates his personality. And then at the bottom it says, in the future, the relationship between artist and patron will change, and that indeed happened. The slide shows a contract, a letter. When Leonardo prepared works, he signed such contracts with his patron. He always had a negotiator who was a notary in between. In Firenze, there are more notary publics than the artist, and Leonardo's father himself was a notary public. Whenever a contract was signed, there is always the notary public in presence, and very specifically and in fine detail, contract papers have been prepared and signed. And when there is a delay by the work's preparation, then fine will have to be paid. For example, the blue painting for the Holy Mother and Child, it must be an ultramarine color from Afghanistan, and not just any blue paintings. Those specifics have been mentioned, and because I studied all these when I was a student and I became a manga artist, and I was doing a contract, and an editor took out a piece of paper out of the pocket and signed this, and I thought something was wrong, because 500 years ago the contracts were signed much better way, but now I have to sign this piece of paper. Shueisha is of course much better, and not everybody's like that, but still today in some cases contracts are signed that way, just a piece of paper out of pocket. Now from the Renaissance craftsman, and the situations of artists have changed around this time for paintings and for manga as well. Earlier I mentioned about GHQ and the Women's Association giving much pressure on people. Now there used to be a bookstore for lease and for lenders, and you could lend manga books or books whenever you want to read. And for manga writers, manga artists, sometimes male mangaka wrote the girls' manga, like Chiba Tetsuya or the Tsunoda Jiro or Akatsuka Fujio as well. They all used to do girls' manga, because you couldn't make money unless you could do any types of manga, and you couldn't assert yourself. Just like the artists in Renaissance era, you just accept any assignments that come your way. You may not like those ballerinas, girls' comics. You still have to do it. That was the time. However, manga became more popular among the public, and then other media began to notice. For example, TV. Well, Tetsuan Atomu, the Astro Boy, is very interesting. Why not make anime video out of this? Or once you become an animator, you move to better succeed in economic aspects, or then cinematization may occur, and it may be in live person cinema. So manga artists. Well, for them, the publishing house became sort of a patron, and they did a lot of things together with publishing companies. The companies found new opportunities for the manga artists, and then animation or the live person films had been made. They had been successful. That was a good thing to happen, and this trend still continues today. So, in short, publishing companies or TV stations, those media in a way became an important content, or maybe they're more like a dictator, but that's the position that the media has. But now, manga artists no longer have to rely on media to be successful. The time is changing because of digitalization. Now you can read manga through different opportunities in media, and you have the comic where you do not have to have editors or publishing house. Whatever you illustrate, you can sell directly to the people. Those the comic opportunities, the events and opportunities. Once you visit those events, one artist may sell 20,000 yen, 10,000 yen worth of product. That seems to have become common. So the position of the artist, the mangaka, seems to have clearly changed. I know I'm running out of time. I shouldn't be talking about myself, but this is the Termae Romae I talked about earlier. And I'm not sure if you know, I hope some of you know this, but where did it happen? How was it born? Well, I left Japan when I was 17 and lived overseas a long time. So bath is a very popular culture tradition in Japan, but I didn't have that opportunity to take baths overseas. I loved baths when I was a child, but I had to live in homes without any bathtub many years. And then ancient Roman coming out of Japanese baths, well, the image popped up in my head when I was in Portugal ironing my clothes, and that is why it became to be such a silly image. And I illustrated this and sent this via fax to my friends. They worried if I'm okay, but that was a beginning. And with this, I started Termae Romae, and that became a work. But before beginning to illustrate this, I had a lot of difficulties, including not being able to enjoy bath. But this became a work, and then this became a live person film. Then it's gradually started to change, just like a clay work. I no longer knew what it was, but because I signed a contract, I gave the rights to my work. I couldn't complain how it was altered and adapted, but yes, I did have a rather complex feeling about this. Now, I remembered this the contract I signed this many years ago, because when I was talking to my editor about this, and he said mangaka artists do not have to worry about contracts at all. Anything else other than manga, don't touch it. The publishers will take care of everything else, and that's fine. I could concentrate on works. But then afterwards, when it was adapted and changed, I did have a complex feeling, and I'm sure this is the common experience with all artists, and similar incidences have happened in recent years, the months, as you know. I think we'll have to talk about this more in the future. But the time is changing, and we need to be aware of all those changes. Now, Tiger Mask. This is the illustration of the character, and if you notice, you're either my age or older. Now, why do I want to show you this? Well, I said the time is changing, and like this is a sole lone wolf hero fighting for justice. It used to be very popular in Japan, Kamen Rider, Astro Boy, and others, but now the heroes work in group. They fight as groups. Collective heroes is what we have today. Now, the Lucius is probably the lone wolf hero in the manga. What I want to say is that when Tiger Mask became popular, that was a time when Japan was after the influence of GHQ, after the Second World War, Western culture came into Japan, and whatever came to Japan, those were the Western type of hero and justice.
これが結構この時大きな影響力として日本人の中に浸透してきていたんだなということはこういう。
And that became more popular in Japan, this Christian style justice, Western style justice. But after the passage of time, then the Japanese, so this kind of totalitarian harmony with society, I have a feeling this is coming back. But having said so, when you think about all of this, Japan, how should I put this? In this totalitarian society, this social harmony, with that as the axis, that was being demanded of us. But even now, the Western culture type, like me, I am able to draw manga like this. And it hasn't taken root yet. Ever since the Meiji Restoration, when there was the Meiji Cultural Revolution, that flow, that trend, maybe, even today, maybe it still hasn't taken root. So we're in a time of transition, and manga have unique moves that manga are making. And I came with a lot of things to talk about, but I'm running out of time. So a lot of things are happening in the manga industry right now, and I feel that being a manga artist, that position, and the media. So I feel that like the Renaissance, I hope that we'll be able to see a time of stability, of balance, like in the Renaissance. And I've gone rather quickly, I've run out of time, and I'd like to end my keynote. Thank you very much. Thank you for your introduction. My name is Horiuchi. I'd like to thank so many people for coming together today in such large numbers. And Ms. Yamazaki, thank you for your presentation. Oh, thank you. First, you started out as a painter. And you're now in this position. And in your self-introduction, you said you're a manga artist. Regarding manga, regarding the future, the past, present, and future, I'd like to ask you about the broad picture. So the manga industry is getting very large, no mistake. And like Yamazaki-san just said, contracts, agreements, or manga's position, or protecting the rights of manga artists. Are things okay as they are? I get the feeling it's rather fragmented, listening to your talk just now. Going forward in the future, regarding the manga industry, what's your outlook? How do you see it? Regarding Japanese manga, as English, people talk about Japanese manga, and Japanese manga is going out there into the world. Japan is a contents industry. That being the situation, and the manga artists individually, they have issues. So what do you think is going to be the future direction? Well, I think it's fluctuating, so things are changing rapidly, and I'm not quite sure what's going to happen in the future. First, a big characteristic is you go to convenience stores and you can tell in the past there was a very large magazine corner. And there were manga that you could only buy in convenience stores, but now you don't really see them very often. And people who buy books in paper form are decreasing. Magazines in the future, will they continue to exist? Today, you can get by digitally. So as paper, manga in paper form, for a long time people have been very familiar with it, but they may disappear in the future. That being the case, is everything going to go to digital? Because we're starting to see the emergence of AI intervening, which means the way manga artists depict their manga. Before, I was doing everything manually. I would draw lines on paper, my hands would be blackened with ink. But I live outside Japan, and moving around with paper and ink is very difficult. So before, manga that I sent from Damascus in Syria did not reach Japan. So after switching to digital, I thought this was wonderful. And my son was saying, when the iPad emerged, you should be using this iPad, mother. Why aren't you using it? And at my age, it was very difficult changing to digital tools, but I did. And then that means the way you depict manga will change. For example, if you can copy and paste, or if you make a mistake, you can erase it, and then you can bring it back. So when you draw a picture, after things turn digital, I don't feel so tense anymore. It's very subtle, but there are changes. In time, a manga artist, a lot of people die early, but it was a job that was very physically and mentally very, very tiring, and you don't get much sleep. But maybe mentally or maybe physically, you can choose ways of becoming a manga artist that is not so tiring. As a manga artist, that's what I'm thinking of in the future. However, regarding the economic impact going forward, I'm not quite sure. Japan right now, it has a head start. However, China, South Korea, or Europe, there are lots of people who have interest in manga, who are writing or drawing manga. These people, how much will they grow? How far will they grow? I think about that sometimes. Thank you. Personally, I too, I write a lot of books, and with publishers, I talk with publishers a lot. And I'm not a really popular writer, so I don't have negotiating powers, and they tell me this is the template, and that's it. And 10%, that's what I get as royalties. And like Yamazaki-san said earlier on, we're now in the 21st century. Sometimes I do get that impression that it's very outdated. But now contents are moving around like this, and manga have become a big industry. And the manga artists, their rights, their self-expression, or the contracts and agreements, and the degree of freedom in signing these agreements, hasn't this moved forward very much? Yes, I wanted to talk about this, and I skipped because I didn't have time when I talked about Tiger Mask. In the end, people in Japan, regarding this, they don't narrow it down to that. When you see things from a broader perspective, in Japan, people look for harmony, or regarding customs, they're not very good at changing customs. That's the kind of people they are. I've been traveling around the world, and I feel that sometimes. And in the past, this was the custom. It's okay, let's leave it at that. Let's not change it. 10 years ago, when I did Terumai Romai and had a problem with the contract, I grew up outside Japan, and I sometimes spoke up on TV. And then people said, a Yamazaki Mari, a manga artist who speaks up. But it's not like there were other artists who learned from me or followed me. It was like, why did you speak up? Things are okay as they are. Manga have always been like this. And I was being dragged down. So I thought, social harmony, stability, when you think about that, the people of Japan, nails that stick out. People don't want to become the nail that sticks out. They want harmony. They want to make sure there's nothing that sticks out. I think that's what Japanese society is. So they say, okay, this contract doesn't feel quite right, but never mind, I'll agree. But people like me who've lived outside Japan for a long time, I've done art history, I've done research on contracts, and I become a manga artist. These are the times. When you think about that, things are different from the past. And I'd like people to be aware of this. I feel that sometimes. Thank you very much.
Well, Japan may be very unique. Is that the case? I'm not familiar with the manga industry. But in the United States, they have American comics. And that's an industry in China as well. The manga artists, I'm not sure if there are many artists coming up for manga, but the contracts overseas maybe different from Japan, and they're much better, right? They have various different contracts that I've signed, but they always have a template contract, and based on the template, they discuss going back and forth again and again, and until both parties agree. It takes a long time, but in Japan, the contract, the documents are sent to you after the book is published. Now that I get it, that's the situation. Nobody sees. My husband and family is in Italian. When we signed Terma Romae, if I was the only one signing the contract, it would not be a problem. But my family really got upset about the situation. I lived in Chicago in the United States at that time, and my friend Americans, they cited an experience of Harry Potter, the writer, and his Mari, are you doing this? And I wasn't. They said that's not right. Hire a Japanese lawyer, and then I'll hire a lawyer and started a contract. But then a publisher reprimanded me, saying no mangaka employ lawyers, because all the contracts and other works have been undertaken by publishers. That's been the practice. It's not good or bad, but changing the tradition is something that leads to a very low cost performance situations, and that makes the situation difficult. If the thing is to be reformed, maybe the Terma Romae was a topic 10 years ago, and very recently, Shogakukan's manga artist, there was a major incident that we all know about. And accumulating these experiences may eventually lead to a change, but we can only wait. Well, as for me, I started as a Japanese banker, and it was a case about 40 years ago. I was a bank employee. I started the work. And as you know, all the Japanese financial activities are strictly regulated with the finance ministry. And the interest rate to share prices have been determined. Actually, it may sound as a surprise to you. It wasn't the market that determined the share prices, but rather it was led by banks, and you had to have the guidance of the Ministry of Finance for everything that you do. That was the time. And after all the issues and the Lehman shock and all the scandals and everything, after decades, the world has changed. It's very different today. So even very slowly in Japan, the society changed. And of course, you are the shareholder, the writer that speak up. Well, the shareholders that speak up, that's been a hot topic. People, the shareholders make comments to the companies, and because of the Tokyo Olympics, the issue of major advertisement agency became aware, or more recently we know of the entertainment production companies. That's been a very hot topic. So things seem to be changing, and it seems that Yamazaki-san, you are at the forefront of all these changes. Well, I'm not having my justice flag. I'm not swinging that. I just want to protect manga because I have gone through so much difficulty writing this manga, and I want to protect it. And that is why I spoke up for protecting Terma Romae. But now it's more like the manga is becoming a topic because the vulnerable people have come to gain power. So compliance and other issues, people with power now have to take care or pay attention to what the vulnerable people say. And the manga artists may have started to speak up now because of this situation, but the ideal situation that I have is not just based on those specific situation of time, as has been the situation. You are the artist expressing yourself, and you want that position to be protected, because any creators have to suffer a lot in order to produce. Like, you listen to Jimi Hendrix music and you love it and enjoy, but the life of Jimi Hendrix, think about it. Maybe he had done a lot of things that should have not been done, and people don't talk about it. And Savonarola as well. They say that people must live with morale and you have to be right at all times. But that's not the situation that will lead to creation of artwork. You suffer a lot, you feel a lot of sadness and difficulties. Only the accumulation of that will lead to creation, to creativity. And regulating that creativity may not lead to a proper situation. So right now, the mangakas are speaking up and demanding freedom and this and that. But based on that situation, new regulations may be imposed. So, as you know, I've been working on the history of ancient Rome. The individualism had been the main part of time, and when all the works of individuals gathered together, leading to harmony, that may produce something that was very good, just like a musical orchestra. Each person has played different instruments. I know my mother was in orchestra. The individuals may not be on good terms, but when they work together, they create such beautiful music together. Individuals may not be so nice, but as a group, they produce something nice, something good. So as a society, you may have something like orchestra, or the One Piece, the anime, the manga works. I said totalitarian, but that is a collection of individuals. So in Japan, I think we have an environment where such a collection of individuals, totalitarianism may be good, and we have the 800 gods in Japan. Just like in Rome, they have many gods. In Japan, we have just plenty of gods working as one country. And the Western concept is to have one God, and that's the culture that came to Japan. But maybe we can coexist, and that could lead to a very interesting production. You said totalitarianism earlier. I thought you had a negative connotation, but no, that's not the case. Well, going back to history and thinking about the future, I think we all do that. And history may not repeat itself, but the paintings in the Renaissance era, just like what you have drawn, it became very popular, and now freely the artists can assert themselves as individuals, and they're moving away from churches, becoming human beings as individuals, painters. Now that's the history. Now looking back the history and considering the current present manga industry, eventually, what will it be in the future? Well, will never disappear. Like the fresco paintings were born, the mosaic paintings were born, and now manga paintings or manga as an artwork is born. Forever, it will persist as a content tool. And how it is going to be illustrated, how it's expressed and presented, it may change, but the story and pictures merged as a sign, and then something new will be created. In that sense, it's different from film. It's two-dimensional. So even more than films, we have to have better imagination capabilities, imagination power to be able to read the manga works. So that's one major revolution. Manga is a major revolution as an expression. Choju Giga is the painting from Edo era, and that is in the origin. The paintings, the collection of animals is the origin, and the ukiyo-e paintings as well. These are the origins and will still persist. Manga will continue to exist, and also along with the economic and social changes, there will be changes in manga.
But specifically, I don't really have a specific image. Back in the Renaissance era, the paintings, looking back, maybe until becoming contemporary art today, it's gone through a lot of twists and turns. This kind of change, is that the image you have? Yes, I think probably that's one possibility. But right now, the person I thought of was earlier on in Renaissance with the paintings, with the creative works. Even today in Italy, the economic impact is still being born. Things like that, people go to Italy because they want to see the paintings. Or in Japan, there are lots of exhibitions from Italy or from ancient Roman remains. And through this, Italy, the Italian economy, is being supported by the art. Therefore, manga, it is different, but it's like a heritage in one respect regarding this culture as something that has to exist, as something essential that continues to create and have an economic impact. I think it's going to continue to have an impact, but now it's becoming digital. You cannot call these original artwork. Well, it is original artwork, but you can copy and paste it. It's not just written on one single piece of paper. Right now, I have an exhibition that's traveling around the world, and with Terumae Romae, it was on paper, but the paper is becoming old and fragile. Things like that, they'll probably have more value added. After I die, the Terumae Romae, the original prints, the original art, that might be able to sell at a good price. However, what about the ones that are digital? What will the response be? How will they be treated? I see. We're running out of time. Earlier on, you talked about Choju Giga, the animal cartoons, or the ukiyo-e prints. And in the Edo period, things like that, like hokusai manga, they became popular. People looked at them and enjoyed themselves. And today, manga, like Japanese culture, I think it's led to Japanese manga today. But back then, ukiyo-e and the manga, or the manga-like things, they were created in studios like the Renaissance studios. I think it's very close. Yes, they're very similar. That's what I thought listening to you. So in Japan, the changes in Japan, how should I put this, have led to today. And these changes maybe hint at how manga will change in the future. And ukiyo-e and manga today, in between, is there something like a bridge? Regarding this, do you have any opinions, any thoughts? Probably, as a culture for the general masses, these kinds of secondary works, how do we respond to that? I think that's the issue. For example, in Italy, what exists in Italy? So this is something that we are going to keep for centuries. So things that will remain. But things in Japan, they were written on paper or drawn on paper. And paper, like our homes, it's not everlasting. At some point in time, it may disappear. And actually, culture for the masses, like ukiyo-e, that they're the same. And at the Boston Arts Museum, they were put into tea boxes. That's how they were treated. And manga, I think, are still a part of that. That's why with manga, you read it, you throw it away. On the train, someone next to me would be scrolling down Terumae Romae at top speed, and I thought, read it more carefully. But that kind of thing happens. But that cannot be helped. That kind of culture, as culture for the masses, it has to take root. So it's probably not going to be treated as art. And that's how it will probably remain. But for human beings, I think it's something that has to exist, like Nicole Cooley-san did a curator for a manga exhibition at the British Museum. And I was talking to Nicole and I asked her, why did you decide to do this at the British Museum? You could have done it at the Tate. Or you could have done it somewhere where they handle paintings. And she said, no, manga is culture. And it's true. If it's at the British Museum, everything it's the miracles of the culture of mankind. So all the miracles exist at the British Museum. So like the trajectory. So like Uru's standard. So that's how she sees manga. And when I realized this, I thought, I see, this is how manga is going to remain. So not in the art galleries, but maybe in the museums as a content. Maybe that's how manga will continue to exist. I see. Maybe, rather than art, it's going to be something broader, culture itself, or civilization. Maybe it's closer to that. Earlier on, in my keynote, I talked about how in the background, back then, you can see Japanese society in the background, which means manga. It's not just simple art. It's much more human-like. It's like a documentary. I mean, the contents may be fiction, but I feel that, yes, it is maybe part of civilization. I think it's a very important content. Thank you. Okay, we've run out of time, so lastly, this is something I have to ask you. Patrons. At the Asian Society, at the Art Committee, in the end, art has to have patrons. Otherwise, it cannot survive. And in the world of art, how can we get hold of the budget, the money? We've been discussing that a lot regarding the art market, regarding corporate sponsors, regarding individual people who have art collections, the Medicis. Of course, in the Renaissance era, you have to talk about the Medici family, but currently, in this era, the patrons of art, from that perspective, what kind of discussion do you think we can have? Manga patrons, for the time being, of course, would be the publishers. There are the publishers, and if the publishers like you, you draw a manga for them and they pay you for it. But after that, regarding the manga contents, maybe they're turned into live-action movies or they become anime, they become much broader, which means the patrons of the publishers, there are a variety of corporations, but they're not directly linked to the manga artists. So that's not something that we would strongly feel. But we are trying to survive through manga. And our patrons, psychologically, are the readers. If the contents are good, if the readers like us, then nothing is better than that. And when I came up with a sequel for Terumae Romae, what I thought was, if I start something new to surprise people, I don't want to depict manga like that anymore. I felt very strongly about that. Like Mitokomon, like Sazae-san. If you read it, you know what's going to happen. You can tell what's going to happen, but that's why you can read it with a sense of relief and you enjoy it. I think at my age, I feel that's more important now. When you think about it that way, then the practical side, rather than think about the monetary side of things, the readers who support us and the publishers and the editors who understand us, these three, I think, are essential for manga artists. Thank you. Probably Yamazaki-san's message is, to the publishers, please, publishers, be more aware. Yeah, well, Shueisha is very good to me. Okay, so Shueisha is okay, right? And there's still lots more I'd like to ask you, but I regret to say we have run out of time. So we would like to end this session. Thank you very much. And could you have a round of applause, please?